who's next? Trey Murphy. So,
of course,
Trey Murphy has been, I feel like, in Pistons rumors for the past year. I think he's the worst kept secret from the Detroit Pistons organization and their interest in. To you, like, how real do you think the smoke is with the interest level from the Pistons with him?
I think the smoke is real. I think, when looking at, this is a relationship league. You have to acknowledge the pre-existing relationship with Trajan and Trey with Trajan's time in New Orleans. I believe Trajan was pretty instrumental in drafting, Trey, with the Pelicans, and, is very familiar with what he's capable of and, like the trajectory that he's had in his career. You also have Fred Vincent on the bench, who, is, considered one of the best shooting coaches in basketball, was pretty integral in the development of Trey there. So, I'm sure there's definitely like a lot of, just like a lot of like fondness from their time. But then again, you look at the skill set for what the Pistons need. You look at the skill set and where the league is going as a whole. I mean, Trey just checks every single box, right? Like he, like when you look at what the Pistons, like when we look at what the Pistons are looking for, someone who can shoot the ball, someone who, he's not necessarily someone who is going to consistently put the ball on the floor and create a ton of offense for himself, but he's someone who certainly, is able to do that at times. And he's very much like that kind of like Mikal Bridges type player where you can kind of fit him in wherever you need him. He's kind of like a Swiss Army knife, kind of like a jack of all trades, and then the other thing too is the salary really makes it doable because, this upcoming year in the 26-27 season, he's set to make $27 million, and then the last 2 years of his contract are at 29 and 31 respectively. So, it's certainly something that's doable. The question would just be, what would you have to give up to get him? Because the trade packages for Trey, like his value's kind of been all over the place. And if there's anything, that about Troy Weaver in a trade conversation, is how unpredictable he can be. And I think that's why, I know like Kuku Heel floated around like the trade package of like what it could look like of like throwing in, like, I think his package had like Isaiah Stewart, Marcus Sasser, a first round pick. I think like Ron might have been in, like Ron or like Karras might have been in there too. I'm not entirely sure, but I know like Trajan has said, especially they don't want to give up any draft capital past 2029. So you would certainly have to give some guys that they would want. And I think if you're looking at like what really makes sense for like the next Isaiah Stewart team, I think it's something like that where it makes a lot of sense. And like you are getting a lot, like, like Isaiah Stewart like is pretty good value, if like on top of like other assets too. So all that to say, like, I think, like, this felt a lot more realistic to me from day one than say when Brandon Ingram was on the market. And I think all of the smoke and all of like the tea leaves have kind of pointed to that being the case. And again, it's the mold of both being someone who is, who is young, who has the ability to grow alongside the other guys in this team. But it is also, it's like, the other thing you have to acknowledge is, as much as we like Trey Murphy and the fit that he has, he's never been an all-star. Like, even though like we know that he can pop in a better system, it's not like it's not like every moment in New Orleans has been like sunshine and lollipops, right? So I think you do have to acknowledge that. And even if you are saying like, oh, he's like a Mikal Bridges type trade, the Knicks like it's not even like Mikal Bridges is like a huge part of their championship either. Right. So it's like I definitely think Trey could be more like more of like a reliable option than that. But again, there's definitely some risks alongside it. As long as you're not giving up too much in a deal, I think he's a perfect fit alongside these guys. And again, it's like, I don't think Tyler Hero individually would plug every hole the Pistons need. I don't think Trey Murphy individually plugs every hole that the Pistons need. But a combination of those things, I think you have a really interesting basketball team there.
Yeah, I don't know if they could pull off getting Trey Murphy and Tyler Hero in the same offseason.
It'd be a lot.
I think it would be an incredible task to do so. I will say from talking to some New Orleans Pelicans reporters and podcasters, from what they heard, Troy wants some of his guys back. And you can look at this core. You can look at Asar Thompson. You can look at Jalen Duren, Marcus Sasser, Isaiah Stewart. Pelicans drafted Derek Queen. But the biggest problem with Derek Queen isn't so much his fit. He just cannot play next to Zion whatsoever. They're just it's just really wonky with both of them. I think they need more of a center that can play next to Zion because with New Orleans, they're not really in the mindset of rebuilding because of the ownership down there. They're looking to still compete in a stacked Western Conference. So I think for a Trey Murphy trade, I've heard they really like Ron Holland, really big fans of him. They like Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, and Asar Thompson. Like those are the four guys that get brought up in trades for Trey Murphy. And my thing is like, if Sarr's off the table, like, you know what, you can have your pick of combinations of players.
Unless you're getting a first-team All-NBA player, Sarr's off the table. And even then, I'm not necessarily opening that conversation.
Exactly. Pelicans fans is widely underrate Asar Thompson as a player. They just look at the box scores. But that's beside the point. I think if the Pistons were to do a deal with Trey Murphy, Isaiah Stewart or Jalen Duren would be, no pun intended, the center of that trade because they need a center. Obviously, I think Troy really likes Stu. He really likes Duren. But I think those are the two players that I always hear from Pelicans guys that Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver really like. But you also have the other side of the fence of like, the Pacers have said, hey, like we're interested too. The Golden State Warriors, they tried offering, I guess, Jonathan Kuminga, which they said no thanks. Now they're offering Moses Moody and Brandon Bajensky and some first round pick. So I really don't know what's going to happen with Trey Murphy. If I did have to guess, I don't think they're going to get the haul that they think they're going to get. He's a fine player. Like, don't get me wrong. Like 20 points a game on 15, 16 shots attempts a game. This is more about New Orleans. If you put him in an environment that's more structured, with whether it's JB Bickerstaff or Rick Carlisle or even Steve Kerr for that matter, I think you would see the value in Trey Murphy, and I think he would get talked about in a brighter light than he does nationally from other national media members.
Well, even you look at like they're not going to get the same like value for Trey Murphy that they would have gotten even like 4 months ago, because you look at the way that the lottery system has changed and the way that lottery odds have flattened. Now first round picks are going to be harder, to come by. Like you're going to, like Trajan touched on it, like you're going to see less teams be willing to move off of them. Like I know fans in New York, like during the parade and after they won the championship with Mikal Bridges were saying F them picks. But like, if you want to be a good team in this league and if you want to have like a sustainably competitive team, you cannot say F them picks. And if you're going to say F them picks, you better be getting a superstar in return. And even then, like you better make sure he has a pretty good window. Like that's why even like, like Miami giving up like 3 first round picks, I know like that might look, like that might not look like a lot for a guy like Giannis when you compare it to like even what like the Timberwolves got for Rudy Gobert back in the day. I think that trade in particular just kind of skewed a lot of minds of like what trade values really are. But in this modern league, like the value and the way that these picks are considered, it's changed radically. And so I think just from that standpoint in and of itself, New Orleans isn't going to be getting back what they think. And even then it's like, again, as great of a skill set as Trey Murphy has, as much as he checks all the boxes of like a championship level role player or like a high level starting caliber player you want against a guy like alongside a guy like Cade, it still needs to be pointed out he has not been an all-star caliber player. And when you like he could maybe get that at some point in his career, if you don't have that high of an upside, like can you really give up that much? Because even then, the reason why the Nets the Knicks had to give up as much as they did to go out and get Mikal Bridges was because of the fact that he was with the Nets. And that was a special circumstance where it was an inner city trade that the Nets and Knicks literally have almost never worked together, and they might never work together again. Like that was a one-of-one trade.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're going to get into the Knicks a little bit later about like how the Pistons could possibly learn from their championship. But to your point, with the NBA draft lottery changes, I think teams are going to be a little bit more hesitant to trade first because you could basically make the play-in tournament and have a small chance of winning the lottery now. I think first-round picks now hold more weight than they did yesterday.